So for this session, I have the honor to invite Dr. Melanie Garson as the moderator. She is the Cyber Policy and Tech Geopolitics lead in Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, and Melanie is a return speaker on our stages here in Tel Aviv University. With her on the panel, we have first the honor to have here again for the second time today, General and Sir Nick Carter, the former Chief of the Defense Staff in the UK. We have the pleasure to have Dr. Avital Schrift, the Vice President of Core Technologies from IAI, Einat Weidberg, she's the partner in Shibolet & Co., and BG Yuda Elmakayas, the Head of Research and Development Unit in DDR&D, the Israel Ministry of Defense. So with that, please, Melanie, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yaniv, and good afternoon, everybody. It's an absolute honor to be here. And I know it's a post-lunchtime slot, and so we've got something really exciting to keep you awake and to really kick off your afternoon, and really an epic group of panelists. And I can't wait to get into it. And really what we're trying to look at with this panel, and we've called it Dare to Imagine for a reason, because predictions rarely happen to be true, but imagination can't be argued with. So today we're going to think about a little bit about the disruptive tech that can really reshape defense, thinking about how we build the organizational and policy levers to enable entrepreneurs to develop and deploy them, and the mechanisms to increase access by operators to edge and frontier tech, and how we develop tech ecosystems, all in about 30 minutes. So I think we could just about do it. So to sort of kick us off, I want to ask each of you just, to give us sort of on one leg, in one, couple of minutes. You eloquently set out, Nick, about the changing character of warfare that we're seeing right now this morning. So I want to ask each of you just to think about how are we going to get ahead of this changing character, and how do we imagine really to be able to think about the tools that we're going to need if we're going to really look forward to this future change. Do you want to kick up, or should we start with Yehuda?
First, if I may, I think we're really facing a change in the conduct of the way we conduct war these days because of technology, science, and their availability. First to armies of modern countries, but also to the enemy. I think the availability of electronics platforms to everybody, even to the enemy, creates great threat. But emerging technologies like AI, quantum, robotics, and others can give countries, advanced countries of the modern world, a great change and a way really to overcome the current advantage that organizations that are not country organizations, but they are relevant and strong. I think the technology is in our hands, and we can do lots of creative and smart use of it.
Thank you. Einat.
Well, I think that if a few years ago we used to say that defense tech is weapon, and then came September 11 and there was the Homeland Security trend. So we added to the weapons also all kind of security application. And then came the cyber. I think that what happened during the last year or two is that defense definition has become broader than I could have imagined back in the years. I mean, if in addition to cyber, drones, robotics, and all the other things that Yehuda mentioned, we have now money laundering, we have mental health even, we have law enforcement, we have fake news application. I mean, all kind of applications and products that we are now understanding that are part of the defense field, and nobody would have thought about it a few years ago.
A much broader field by what we mean by defense tech. Avital.
Thank you, Melanie, for raising questions. First of all, I made a decision as we entered the panel to change my job description from now on from core technologies to dare to imagine, because essentially my job description is to try to identify those core technologies, those emerging technologies, especially when they are least mature, whether they are at the research stages at the academia or at more mature stages at those small startups, pre-seed. And this is what essentially I do. I'm trying to scout the academia in Israel and abroad, to scout the startup community, and to look for those ideas that will be part of our products not 2 or 3 years from now, but 5, 10, and maybe more years from now, in order to identify them as early as possible and to work with those inventors, those visionaries, to help them make their dream come true.
Thank you. Danny.
Yes, I mean, people have heard enough of my voice this morning earlier, but I'm afraid I will re-enter the lists. I mean, I think that one of the dogs that hasn't barked this morning has been a conversation about what China is up to. And I do think when we think about modern technology, we should really be thinking about China, because, of course, what President Xi Jinping has done is to use a state-led initiative of what he calls new productive forces. And it is phenomenal, the amount of state money that's being poured into investment in new technology. And that is going to be our pacing competitor for us who are sort of Western-oriented countries, I would suggest. Where I think we do have an edge, though, I think, and this has come out this morning, and particularly the remarks that General Deverell made, are that we are good at creating an ecosystem where we unlock the potential of all of our people in an innovative way to be able to decentralize and then to be able to innovate and develop accordingly. And that is a very different model, of course, to the Chinese model in all of this. So I think it's about people, it's about an adaptive edge. And it'll obviously be about a combination of technologies, ultimately, which will be what the future, where future success will come from.
Well, thank you for that. And you've brought up some really good points. I'm going to pick up on the last two, this sort of sourcing new tech and creating ecosystems, because what's also come out today, and we've had the sort of conversation from the primes, and certainly in the conversations I'm having back in the UK, is sometimes that ecosystem is not quite as accessible, both for the startup community or actually for some of the end users to get their hands on it a little bit. So we're imagining, no necessary comment on where it is. How would you imagine that some of these challenges could be done differently? Or what might you see done differently? Or what would be your advice to people that might want to change these pathways? And I'm going to pick on Einat first.
Okay. So actually, 2 of my colleagues here are involved in the change in the ecosystem, because I know that Mafat are now thinking really strongly about how to assist young startups, how to combine forces with the VC ecosystems here in Israel. I know that you are making it easier for startup companies to get projects from the Israeli Ministry of Defense. And this is and how to make the restraints of ownership of the IP and so on and so forth less burdening. And I think that this is very important, because Mafat always used to be a source of funding for early stage companies, but it used to be a very long process, sometimes with many restraints. And bless you for doing it. Continue to do that, because I hear from all of the VCs that you are talking with them and trying to become part of the ecosystem. And on the other hand, the IIA are also doing their steps. I've been working with the IIA, with Elbit System, with Rafael for years now. The trend used to be, let's commercialize our technologies and make some money in the high-tech industry. So we used to see very mature technology that the defense companies invested in tens of millions of dollars, And now they're trying, let's see if we can do something with them in the medical devices industry, in the food tech industry, let's see. But now I think that they realized that you can look outside and take technologies in. They are busy. There are now, there are a lot of demand. And I think that they are also making change in perception, trying to create partnership with the VC world, trying to think about partnership with entrepreneurs, trying to be more easygoing, less restraints on early stages company. And again, a blessed process. And the third actors who are not represented here in the panel is the VC community. I see now VCs saying out loud proudly, we are going to invest in defense tech, early stage. This is a must because the private equity fund and the cross-border funds are waiting for more matured company. If, in addition to Mafat, the defense companies, the VC community shall also make the required adaptation, which it is trying to do, I think we will be in a different place and the defense tech trend will become a real field of business for startups.
So I'm just going to tweak the question a little bit because Avital's done a really good job of sort of singing your praises, perhaps. But sometimes the VCs and the military, at times you're working on slightly different timelines or sort of needs at different stages. So I'm wondering how are you addressing that, or how are you adapting to be able to work better with them?
It's not a matter of us working on different timelines. It's the perception that the public had of us being slow and big
And tough.
and maybe spoiled and tough. But we understood that unless we'll join forces with the technology at the early stages and adapt our behavior to what is required in order to nurture those technologies, we will cease to exist. And that's an understanding that we had, and we are acting accordingly. So yes, we have the projects which have those strict timelines and the tough customers, but in parallel to those difficult projects, we are investing every year hundreds of thousands of US dollars into pure R&D, where we can work in the timelines the technology allows, and we are very flexible. We are not trying to swallow those small startups, but rather let them be themselves, because we appreciate those youngsters, those entrepreneurs, their motivation. And I want to say another thing which may seem very unorthodox, but I believe it to be true. There are no more dual-use technologies.
Absolutely.
Everything can be defense and can be civilian application. You can take your microwave oven and look at radar technology, and it's the same, so everything is dual use. So whatever you are doing and thinking, it may have the best medical application, it can be used to defense as well, and the other way around.
Oh, thank you. I want to come back to that. We've already had a little bit of a chat about this, but what did you want to add on this?
First, I agree with Avital, definitely. I think so many companies, almost every company can be a dual use. How does Mafat is trying to address startup? First, we work with startup because they bring us value. For a reason, we have an interest. First, we work bottom up. Our juniors are scanning and finding the startup, defining the common interest so we can move with them. Us, the dinosaurs, trying not to ruin, but yes, to create the right framework to make them move fast to our targets. I think armies and technology, especially in iMod, is becoming more and more agile. The time to a project is shortened dramatically, and during the war, even amazingly. I couldn't dream we'll get to those stages. It brings us closer to the startups. In some cases, startup has a valley of death when it needs to jump from an idea to a full system or system of systems. We're trying to be there for them to combine all the missing parts, help them to complete them, bring them a good platform in our facilities for maturing, and really even helping them go out. After a few years, when they're matured, we are happy even to take them. We did that twice this year. It was a big change in us. Take them as prime contractors that take the defense industries as subcontractors. This way, we can make sure the cooperation is better. We're getting there. Sometimes we are proud in 250 startups. It's a lot, but not enough. Really, the portion is growing, and we hope it will grow more in the future.
Just a quick follow-up. So do you think that the impetus to that can be kept on outside of a wartime context that hopefully will finish soon?
Definitely. We don't want to go back to the pace we had before the war.
I want to come to you, Senek, because you've been in the large position. In fact, you've commanded more US forces than any other foreigner has. But now you're also doing advisory work into startups and sort of having more contact with the VC industry as well. So speaking from that hat, what's your take on sort of closing the gap and sort of bridging some of these valleys of death?
Well, I mean, I was unsurprised to hear the point that, of course, in time of war, it's much easier to modernize quickly and to transform and to adapt and all the rest of it. And we saw this during the campaigns in Afghanistan, where, of course, we were losing, and everybody got behind working out how we might win. And, of course, the technology evolved very quickly. Sad to say, though, when it all came to an end, we went back to standard practice. And I caution you that when, in due course, you go back to hopefully not being at war, it will be very challenging, I think, to keep that tempo moving. I don't know, it's a very interesting question, and it will depend between different countries. I was recently in Taiwan, and one of the things that's really impressive about Taiwan is the way they use what they call science parks to bring together science, technology, academia, and venture capital. And they're very clear about what the role of government is. The role of government is simply to enable the infrastructure. They then stand back and allow the innovation to evolve on the basis of the groups of people they pull together. And that's a model that works for them. It won't work everywhere. But I do think the conversation needs to be about what is the role of government in all of this to begin with. Because certainly in the UK, the role of government is not always as positive as it might be. And that will be the same in the United States and probably elsewhere as well. So that conversation, I think, needs to happen. And then you can get into the sort of exciting future that, again, referring to General Deverell talked about this morning, where you can actually iterate and you can take a prototype and see it turn into something that is genuinely scalable, which of course is what we will need if we're going to prevail in the future.
A more physical representation of the ecosystem at heart. I want to pick up now, and I know Einat's chomping at the bit about this concept of, is dual use still a concept, or is it just use? And are we also, creating challenges for entrepreneurs to try and think about being two things or all things to everybody at all times, and should they just think about use? And I know you want to say something.
No, first of all, I absolutely agree with Avital and with Yuda. I think that the whole dual-use concept is less and less relevant these days. I mean, unless you are talking about pure weapon, which even then you can go both. Most of the relevant technologies are definitely dual-use, and it's not a matter of the technology, but of the commercialization of this technology, maybe the regulatory approvals that you will need, but it's the process of how to take this technology, build a product, and actually commercialize it. And I think, again, I've been in this industry for 24 years. The dual use, as any other spin-off, even of a civilian company that split into two different applications, is a bit problematic when you are trying to play commercial in both fields, because the management attention is between two different applications. There is a defocus. The expertise are different. The strategic alliances are different. It depends on which market you are looking at. And I think that what happened before is that there was a concept of, let's take a technology, work with Mafat, get some project that will fund us in the early stages, have a collaboration with IAI, they may sell some product, but the focus is the civilian field, where we can have a brilliant exit in 10 years and become rich. And at the end of the day, these people got stuck with the military technologies because the attention, you know, there is a project and there's a client. And I think that if someone wants to take a technology and currently commercialize it in the defense world, they should proudly say so. The world has changed. There are new opportunities right now. Everybody says that Israel is the high-tech nation. It was all driven from military technology. I mean, some say that without our geopolitical situation, we weren't the startup nation. So I do think that there will be a wave of new startups, and then even if the government will try to go to sleep, there will a new dynamic of defense tech startup that will drive a new vehicle, and maybe it's a new wave of something new in the high-tech ecosystem.
Anybody want to
One
respond?
good exit, everybody will look at the defense tech differently.
Be proud to be a defense tech entrepreneur. Avital, do you want to respond to that at all, Nick?
Well, just a sort of couple of observations. Sorry, you go on. No, I was just going to say, I mean, of course, dual use, of course, makes sanctions quite difficult, as we are seeing elsewhere in the world at the moment, I would suggest. And of course, we do need to recognize that our profession does require requirements that won't be dual use. I mean, where ammunition comes from, for example, is something one needs to reflect on. And I think, again, points were made this morning about how you make sure that happens. But I do agree that for much of the technology that we're talking about, use seems to be a better term than dual use.
So the thing I wanted to add is that us dinosaurs have our advantages. And I can name a few. First of all, by today's time, we have acquired a wide database that we can share. And these days, where AI and big data is everything, owning the database means a lot. So us dinosaurs have a lot of data that we can share. We have experienced the lifetime of projects. We know how to do proper system engineering. I know that it may sound dated and old and like, no, us entrepreneurs, we are going to invent something and in 2 years we are going to have the exit of our life. No, sometime being able to work methodologically and, you know, follow a certain timeline has its advantages. And last but not least, there is the regulatory aspect that Einat has already mentioned.
We have great advantage in this field.
All the word of autonomy, there is a reason why you don't see autonomous cars on the roads right now. And it's not the technology. The technology is there. The regulation, not so much. Who are you going to take to court if, God forbid, an autonomous car runs down someone? Who is to blame? So, us dinosaurs are better equipped to deal with those regulatory aspects, to be able to really certify a system, prove either theoretically or via simulation that the system actually does what it claims to do. And again, in the world of AI and autonomy, it's a must. And this is something that we can bring to the table, that those small and young are least knowledgeable of that.
I think less dinosaurs and more wisdom of the elders. You seemed you wanted to throw something into the
again,
mix.
I agree with Avital. I agree with her with work also.
Dinosaurs agree with each other. That's how it works. You know.
But two aspects of working with dual use. What is our interest in dual use? Dual use is not being funded only by me. There are more partners, so I can use my resources in a better manner and more effectively. This is the way, and this is the point of cooperation between the defense tech and the commercial market. Secondly, it opens the dilemmas. For an example, when I'm doing large language models in Hebrew for the local market, we publish them in the internet. We ask ourselves, yes, our enemy can use it too, to do LLM on Israeli materials, but we chose the technology and the availability of tools to our citizens, to the academy, and the dual use is before we will be afraid of one more option for the enemy to use. And in many cases, or in most cases, I think, we tend to prefer the commercial use also of technology, and really just to let the improvement in technology grow on and on.
So you've actually walked straight into what I think will probably be our last question, so I'll have to do it quite quickly. When I was working on this topic recently, we suddenly noticed that we weren't quite visualizing the system correctly. And we talk about the VCs and the startups, and we talk about the MOD, and we talk about government. And the picture that we're missing in this now is the hyperscalers. So sort of the people that are owning the data. And at a meeting I had, we had AWS there, and they're like, what are we? Are we a prime? Where do we sit in this picture? So now we have another actor in this picture, and that, as we've seen with Musk, can potentially tip the balance of power in a conflict, so materially impact the progress of a conflict. How do you think we should be integrating them into the concept, or how do you perceive working with these large hyperscalers as part of a new model?
We see them already in the cyber world. I think that there are great players there, and the AI now they are generating, because wherever you have an issue of protecting data or using data, so there are major players. How they will fit into other technologies, I think it's a matter of, they will find their way in because they always do, but I cannot imagine exactly how at this moment.
And I do think that the market is leaving the traditional approach of prime and subs towards consortiums, a joining of forces without strictly identifying who is the prime and who is the sub, because at most cases being the prime means a lot of headache, and sometimes it even fits the interest of someone to be the sub and not the prime. So we can see, especially on the emerging technologies where huge investments are required, that consortiums are created and not just, the classical, traditional organizational charts. So I think that this is where we are going, at least on those emerging technologies.
Although somebody needs to do the integration, don't they? And what you don't want probably is government doing the integration.
Huda, have you any thoughts over how you're you brought up the large language model question?
I think primes, at least in the last Swords of Iron, has proved themselves as reliable. They were there when we needed them. They were there when they needed to change. Even worldwide primes, even outside of Israel. So I think primes, though I know sometimes primes in the big companies look heavy, slow, and others, but they proved themselves as reliable, able to change, and I think I think they were a good partner, and those partnerships, strategic partnerships, proved themselves in this last conflict.
Well, thank you. We have about 1 minute, so I'm going to ask you each very quickly for your one sentence. What is the one thing you're thinking about most when we think about reimagining defense tech or the future of defense tech?
If one thing is automation through AI with everything. I think Swords of Iron was AI-based war, responsible AI, but really AI in everything, like electricity. Automation of every procedure we do, because we'll never have enough manpower. AI for many capabilities, robotics, autonomous, everything automized. The amount of threats, the endurance of threats is huge. We need to automate everything by new technologies that would allow us to hold such situation for a long, long time.
The only thing that comes to mind, I shared it with my colleagues, is Albert Einstein said that World War III will be fought, he doesn't know with which weapon, but World War IV will be with sticks and stones. So I think that we see two opposite trends. One, very high-end technologies, but on the other end, we've seen in the last war the good old school weapon is maybe making a comeback, and we will need to face the prices, the cost, the effectiveness. So, and maybe this whole discussion is less effective for World War IV.
I mean, this session is called Dare to Imagine, right? So we need to dare. Right now, to my vision is all about the autonomy. I think that the mankind always wants to be as autonomous as possible. This is why we thought of the cellular phones, in order not to be hooked to the wall via cable whenever we want to talk. So I'm trying to imagine what next. I'm not so sure, but you know who are the best prophets, so I'm only daring.
What combination of technologies is going to make us faster than our opponent?
Well, thank you so much. I could go on asking questions all afternoon, but sadly our time is up. I hope it kept everyone awake in that post-lunch haze. Thank you so much to an absolutely fantastic audience, and if nothing else, dare greatly.